So you guys know how important consent is. This isn't something I need to lecture you about. I'm sure we all were part of that health class talking about consensual relationships and stuff. And there's a huge push in society for consent, before doing something. Make sure the other person's okay with it, and make sure all parties involved understand what's happening. What I find kind of funny is the greatest act of creation, bringing a life into the world, is, I don't want to say non-consensual because that sounds horrible, but you don't have that person's consent to bring them into this world. How crazy is that? It's not something that we usually think about because why would you? That's just how the world works. And if that's how it works, why should we ponder it? There's no changing it, so why try to figure it out? This was something I struggled with for a long time. I've always considered myself to be somewhat philosophical, but the issue I ran into was that things suck, and there's nothing we can do about it. I can be as nihilistic as I want, and that doesn't change the human condition. So what's the point? Is nihilism nihilistic? So welcome to a new video where I'm going to be talking about philosophy and the act of creating another human, and if that's fair. So life is suffering and enjoyment and happiness and sadness and anger and all these different things, right? No matter how you see it, your outlook might be, there's more suffering than there is happiness, or there's more happiness than there is suffering. That all depends. But the point I'm trying to make is that there are a whole bunch of different emotions in life. Life is a roller coaster. There's all these different things that you can experience. And we have the ability to give that experience to someone else. We have the ability to procreate, which means being able to allow someone to experience the same things that we are right now. Now, depending on your worldview, this can be seen as a negative thing. Why would you bring someone into this world when everything is awful, everyone is dying, and you don't have the right to give suffering to another person? On the flip side, you also have the argument that since you have that ability, it's your job to allow someone else to feel the same happiness and experience the joys of life, because you cannot have joy without having sadness. I found this very interesting because I haven't come up with a decision for myself, and I find it's an interesting question to ask anyone who's somewhat philosophical is, do you think having children is a selfish act? Is it just to pass on your genes and to create an immortality, a fake immortality in yourself? Or is there something more to that? Are you given this gift of procreation for a reason? Should you not waste it and give someone the gift of life? And it's such a difficult thing because there are days where I look at it and I'm like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this, or this is what I have to look forward to the rest of my life. And then there are other days where I'm like, you know what, those experiences made me who I am today. And I wouldn't be able to enjoy it without those experiences. And this is the yin and yang scenario. I think I might have talked about it before, but the yin yang is an old symbol. I'm sure you've seen it before. It's like a circle and has two sides. One is black and one is white, and there's a little bit of black in the white and a little bit of white in the black. And it basically means that everything has to live in harmony. There's good and bad, and there's bad and good, and you can't have one without the other, and that sort of thing. And that got me thinking because, I've always been kind of nihilistic, and with depression throughout my childhood and still struggling with it now, I wonder myself if, I'm just sticking around because that's my job because other people want me to, and who am I to say no, right? And I don't know how fair that is to me specifically. And I know that's somewhat of a selfish thing to think, but how else am I supposed to think when that's how I feel, you know? And that comes to my main argument is it worth the suffering in life to go through the happy times? Are happy times even a thing? Or is it just not as sad times as the very sad times, you know? Does the anger just subside for a minute and you're fine, and then the next you're not? Or are all our feelings just fleeting? Now, I know that's a lot to try to process, and I'm here to tell you I don't have an answer. It's one of the beautiful things about philosophy and life in general is there isn't any answer. Anyone who pretends to have an answer is probably lying. And it's all about your own experience and your own worldview. And that's what makes it so cool, is that your philosophy can be completely different than someone else's, even though you both subscribe to the nihilist mentality or something along those lines, you know what I mean? And so I think it's one of those things where you have to evaluate why you'd want to have children. I know people's reasons will change. And it's weird because I don't know my parents' reason for having children. I'm the firstborn. And they had me relatively late in their life. And it seems like it was more or less because they felt they had to. It was the next step, logically. And I don't understand it, to be honest. They got married when they were young, and so they couldn't. They were not financially stable, and so they decided to wait, which, you know, that makes sense. That's respectable. But when I would ask them, they wouldn't really have an answer. Now, neither of them are overly philosophical, so I don't think they've thought it through as deep as, you know, the topics in this video. But it still makes me wonder, you know, why am I here? What is my purpose in this life? Am I put here to create? Am I put here to survive? And if it is just to survive, is that a waste of this gift? That I could be a creative mind, and instead I'm just wasting away each day and, you know, not making anything of this life. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about is everyone who is watching this has been given life. No matter where you're from or who you are, I can make that assumption because you are alive. Now, if you want to see that as a gift or a curse, that's up to you. But the problem I have is I feel like I'm not utilizing it to its extent. I appreciate being alive and, you know, how slim the chances are. And I want to do so many of these things. If you guys watched my last video, I was talking about these comics I made. And that was my passion as a kid. And, you know, I'd love to continue making comics, and that is one of the things that gives me fulfillment. Same with these videos, and same with everything else I do, right? That's the reason I do it is to make something of myself. But at the same time, I feel like I'm not doing enough, or I'm not using that time wise enough. A lot of people are like, oh no, you're still young, you have plenty of time. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what if I don't? You know, we're only here once. And now that'll change depending on your afterlife, your view on the afterlife. But the way I look at it is there is no confirmation of the afterlife. So worst comes to worst, let's say there isn't any. We are here only once. Because if we're here twice, if there's reincarnation, then that's great. That's good news. If there is some sort of afterlife, then that's something I need to evaluate once I die. But let's say worst comes to worst, there is only one life. Now, I need to utilize this to its full extent. But how do I do that when I don't know how to? You know? And so, this gift of life, is it actually just a curse that you have too much to do? You have too much you feel like you need to do. And so you're just paralyzed instead. It's like choice paralysis. When you have too many games to choose from, you end up playing nothing and just staring at the screen. It's the same deal. When you have this vast life in front of you and all these different things that you need to do, because our time here is limited, you end up doing nothing because it's too much stress and too much pressure put on you. Now, should you put that on someone else, or will they look at it differently? And that's the other thing. If you have children, they might have a totally different outlook. They might be so thankful that you gave birth to them and gave them life, because they can experience all these emotions, whether it be happy or sad or anger or guilt or whatever it may be. The fact that you allowed them to experience that because they would have been nothing otherwise, is that enough of a gift? I'll leave it there because, fairly heavy video today and a lot to ponder. So if you guys have any, thoughts or comments, let me know, because I'd love to hear from you guys. So take care,